ACBSP Eternal. We are about to read the unholy book of Dianetics, so we must cleanse the space. Thank you, AArontology. That should be enough. I hope everyone's well this afternoon. I'll give it a minute or two before I dive right in. Now, sorry about the noise of the fans. I could hear it in the last live, but I need those. I'll try mics next time to see if maybe... Hold on, I'm still adjusting my camera, sorry. Okay. Oh, somebody's here. Hello. Hi, Psych, what's up? Yeah, I know there's a lot going on. I watched Aaron right before I came on. And I guess they're doing something on L. Ron Hubbard Way today. And I saw it last night. Man, that was a huge barbecue. I didn't see the actual altercation with Michael. I came in like right after that. Hi, Anna Banana. I like the name. That's cute. So, I got a couple people here. So I was just going to chat for a minute or two, just to let people log on, and then we'll go. Because I only had like 3 people last time, so that's fine. I'm going to do it anyway because I wanted to read it, and I'm reading the whole chapters, which this one was long and repetitive, and if I were trying to study it for real and I really wanted to understand it, I wouldn't. When people say this is some serious mumbo jumbo, it is. So there are things that I put question marks on, meaning I was confused. I'm going to read them to you. The whole point of this is my whole thing for starting this was I wanted to see why so many people join Scientology through Dianetics. Now, I do know there's Dianetics classes, so maybe if you go into one of the classes, they maybe make you better understand what gibberish this man wrote. Plus, I still haven't downloaded, I gotta get my printer ink, downloaded the changes that David Miscavige made in 2007 when he was re-releasing his works, and he re-released this book. And if you see the cover, because this is before then, now it is Dianetics, the Science of Man, or something like that, and that's what's on the new books on the cover, and that's how you can tell if it's before or after David Miscavige. That's with it. The past 3 days I've been hurting. I tried to log in to Surge, and I guess he had just gone off. Somebody announced it. I was popping around different lives trying to get a good feed of what I was on. I was on Michael's phone when Will had it. Will had already got his phone. And then somebody mentioned Surge was live and upset, and I went. It's hard for me to watch people be upset. So I know he's probably upset because he's going to be in there at least till Monday. And this is ridiculous. There is enough footage from what I hear of what happened. And then I came in too late on Aaron's live too. I came in like halfway, and I guess if there's footage, they'd already shown it. So I keep missing everything. So I'll go look at it later. I didn't need to see it. I didn't need to see it to understand what was going on. And nobody's gonna lie when there's so much, and us, when we know there's so much footage. But from what I heard in the live, the cop lied and said Michael did something. Well, stupid. Do they not understand the concept of cameras? That footage is forever, that film is forever. And then you have, I didn't know how many people was out there until Will started trying to get people back. It looked like 20 people, maybe 15. There's a lot of people. I didn't know they were doing all that. I don't know how I missed it. Yeah, I kept switching between all the lives. It was wild. So horrible that this happened to Michael. I know, of all people. He's so calm. You know? And they're just trying to find a reason. You know, Scientology, they got to follow Scientology's marching orders. And their marching orders is to try to hem up the protesters as much as possible. Yeah. Literally. Hi, Susan. Good to see you. We're just talking about Michael. I've missed the footage. I haven't seen it yet, but I got enough explanation of people to know he's not going to be charged. He's going to sit in jail. No bail, as usual. They always got to add something so there's no bail. They don't want anybody to bail out. They just want to punish him for a few days. They always do these arrests on the weekends. We know the deal. We know what's going on. And like I said before, the more I look at that guy that got aggressive with me, I think he would have got physical, but I keep my stuff around me as a barrier, and he tried, and I got my cane out, which he didn't expect. The more I look at it, it was targeted, because it was a guy I'd never seen before, and he pulled my sign out and threw it on the ground far away from me so I would come out. Funny cops had no body cams on. Why is that not nationally you have to, period? Why is it, you know, police department by police department? It doesn't matter. We have enough footage. That's what they don't understand. We probably got 5 different angles of it. On top of Michael's footage. Because a lot of times, the person filming doesn't get a good view. That's why I'm thinking about, I have a knockoff GoPro, and I have a chest, like Liz has. I have a chest strap, and I've decided I think I'm going to start wearing it so I can have a secondary camera. It's not very good. I got it a couple years ago. It was cheap. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. I just had to say something. We know it's all bullshit. Excuse my language. Can't help it. When I get mad, I curse. I've been around the army too much. And I was raised by truck drivers, too. So, okay, guys. Let's get into this crap. So, this was a long chapter. So, I left a lot out. I tried to leave out anything that was just mumbo jumbo, but I will give you an overview really quickly. So what this is, the goal of man is survival. So this whole chapter is about the dynamic principle of existence is survival. The things I left out were immortality, is a consideration of the unit, organ, or species, and there is a graph we'll look at. He's getting into the dynamics, is what he is. There's whole sections I left out that was just really just more, what it is this man thinks everybody is stupid, that he has to explain everything he says. This book could be this long if he just wrote like a normal person. Like if he wrote what he meant to say and then went on to the next subject, but he has to spend a paragraph on it giving you examples of what he just said, like you don't know any better. I mean, I don't know how many ways he's going to discuss how survival is an inherent mechanism, or how all the different it's very annoying. So I tried to underline what he was actually saying, and like this whole page almost is about just, I can't even explain it. Let's just go into it. I said I wanted to read it. I mean, I still, after reading this chapter, I can understand people in anguish, people that are alone, people that are looking for something. And I'm going back, not now, because we have more things available to us now. We even have mental health online. You don't even have to leave your house. I'm talking about when these people came in, the parents of the second and third generation, the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s. This is what they started with, most of them, unless they got pulled in some other way. So this is the goal of man. So there are some paragraphs I'm going to read just because it pertains to so many other things in this chapter. And I don't know how many times, and I left it out, he says, we'll discuss that later in the book. All the time. The goal of man, the lowest common denominator, and of all his activities, the dynamic principle of his existence has long been sought. Should such an answer be discovered, it is inevitable that from it many answers would flow. It would explain all phenomena of behavior. It would lead toward a solution of man's major problems, and most of all, it should be workable. That paragraph right there would probably get a lot of people eyebrows up, if, like I said, back in the day. Sorry, as soon as I started reading, I got a dry mouth. So, for several months, I genuinely thought L. Ron Hubbard didn't even believe his own BS, but now I think he did. I think if he had the personality disorder that I think he did, everybody says narcissism a lot. But because of this person I dealt with in my 20s and my sister, I looked up their behavior, trying to find out what was wrong with them, because it was so beyond normal people that it made me never to want friends again. I haven't had friends for 30 years. And the reason being, somebody felt bad for me. My husband's been my best friend since I was 16. So I was like, I don't really need anybody else. And, you know, my kids and stuff. So anyway, I looked it up. And this is what they say Amber Heard had. It's borderline personality disorder with narcissistic tendencies. Amber Heard had histrionic tendencies because she would freak out. Oh, hello, dear. Did I wake you up, or did the dogs wake you up? Sorry, I wanted to leave the dogs out, but I knew if I did, they'd start barking. So they're in the bedroom with my husband, probably waking him up. And they've just been out. Just ignore them. Tell them to be quiet. And they just had snack. So, narcissist is thrown around a lot, but a borderline personality disorder narcissist, hi Patrick, they believe their world. They believe this weird world they create in their mind, and they say things that are out and out lies to the rest of us, but they believe them. I asked my mom before she died about my sister. I said, we called her a habitual liar. We didn't know what this other thing was yet. Oh, that's fine. I haven't even really got into it much yet. We talked about Michael for a little while, and now I'm talking about what one of the things he might have had is borderline personality disorder with narcissistic tendency, because people throw narcissist around a lot, but there could be more to it. A borderline personality disorder cannot be fixed by medication. It is so ingrained in their brain that it takes either a life-altering event and deep therapy for anyone to even get a little bit better. Yeah, Diana, I haven't spoken to my sister since 99, when my mom died. I think I talked about that another time. She was almost 6 foot tall. We had different dads, because I was 9. I was the only child till I was 9. When she stood over my dying mother and screamed at her, I knew I would never speak to her again. Simple as that. But anyway, the borderline personality disorder. I've researched it a lot, and they really believe this world that they live in and the things that they say. So if he's writing this stuff up and he wants a religion and he wants to be running a religion, he's gonna make himself believe it if he has this thing. Okay, yeah, go ahead and, you know what? I have a phone number that I put on the sub. If you email me, I'll give you my phone number so you can just text me if you don't want to call. So just email me, Diana. So, yeah, even though he may not have believed it outright, after a period of time, he researched all these different religions and all these different cults, and he's writing this up, and I firmly believe that he did believe it, because I think if he didn't, if it was all a scam, his facade would have dropped here and there, or in his writing it would have shown sometimes. I firmly believe that he eventually did believe his BS. I really do. That's just my opinion. Thanks for that comment. So I only got the first paragraph out. The goal of man. So the next paragraph is, he said the whole chapter is the goal of man is survival. Just keep that in mind. That's what he's talking about. That's the whole chapter. And then he just has to explain it as minutely as possible to people, like we don't know anything. Like he's talking to a 5-year-old. Yet he believes we've lived multiple lives and we've been adults in the past. We should be able to understand what he's saying. But you know how he is. Consider all knowledge to fall above or below a line of demarcation. Everything above this line is not necessary to the solution of man's aberrations and general shortcomings, and is exactly known. Such a field of thought could be considered to embrace such things as metaphysics and mysticism. And he has to put definitions of those down there, like we don't know what those are. Maybe some people don't exactly know the definition, but we kind of get the idea of what that is. Below this line of demarcation could be considered to lie the finite universe. All things in the finite universe, whether known or as yet unknown, can be sensed, experienced, or measured. The known data in the finite universe can be classified as scientific truth. When it has been sensed, experienced, and measured, all factors necessary to the resolution of a science of the mind were found within the finite universe and were discovered, sensed, measured, and experienced, and became scientific truth. The finite universe contains time, space, energy, and life. No other factors were found necessary in the equation. Okay. Oh, there's more to the paragraph. Time, space, energy, and life have a single denomination in common. Oh, by the way, the reason I read that whole paragraph is you can see where he hasn't written all of his books yet. This was the first. So he had to start somewhere. Eventually, I believe that becomes the tone scale. And that's why, so you have the above and the below line. So I think that's going to become the tone scale. Being a never end, I'm just guessing. Time, space, energy, and life have a single denomination in common. As an analogy, I'm not going to go. They obey a single order, and that order is survive. Oh, that's fine. I can't read the whole, this was a long chapter. So I'll read as much as the things I left out were where he's going in minute detail trying to explain what he just said. We understand what he just said. So that's pretty, I left out, he had a whole big long example of dinosaurs and bacteria trying to survive in the Black Plague. I left that out. Thanks. Alright. So the dynamic principle of existence is survival. I was thinking about reading the whole book offline, just recording it, and I realized that if I did that without commentary, they would probably get me for copyright infringement, or I would have done it. The dynamic principle of existence is survival. The goal of life can be considered to be infinite survival. Obedience to this command, survive, exclamation point, does not mean that every attempt to obey is uniformly successful. Life form change, and die as new life forms develop. And then I just left out a lot of explanation. What would be the optimum survival characteristics of various life forms? They would have to have various fundamental characteristics differing from one species to the next, just as one environment differs from the next. So he's pretty much talking about evolution, and he talks about it a lot, about different species and being immortal, trying to attain immortality and not death. Yeah, interesting. Oh, and there are some things I found that knowing what they do to people inside, mind control, I saw a lot of that in here. A lot of that. And a lot of... So, the methods of survival can be summed under the headings of food protection, defensive and offensive, and procreation. I underlined that because he's talking about the method of survival is procreation, yet he's so against it in the Sea Org. Probably against it, period. And you would think, we've all said this, that he would want more Scientologists. But I think because the Sea Org is so limited in membership, that's if they tried taking care of the children, and that was a disaster. So now they're not allowed to have kids, because if they do, they have to get out. No more Sea Org members. So that was probably a different... So I thought that was interesting, that survival of man is due to procreation, and he is so against it that he'll bus people to an abortion clinic. Sorry guys, as soon as I start talking, my mouth got dry, and I've had a lot to drink today. I don't understand. That's why. Sorry, I keep licking my teeth. Okay, so procreation. There are no existing life forms which lack solutions to these problems. And then he just goes into talking about, oh, this is the clamshell. I forgot, I didn't. Let's see if this is what he... Oh no, he doesn't say we're from clams. He's just talking about how clamshell works. So he just goes into examples of different organisms all the time. So that's the only stuff I left out, was all these stupid examples trying to explain what he just said. I think we can understand it. If you don't, let me know. I will read his examples. They're good examples, but it's just runs on. All right. And he goes into pain and pleasure a lot. I left a lot of that explanation out, but I'll get to the key points. When one considered pain and pleasure, he had at hand all the necessary ingredients with which to formulate the action life takes in its effort to survive. As will be seen in the accompanying graph, a spectrum of life has been conceived to span from the zero of death or extinction toward the infinity of potential immortality. This spectrum was considered to contain an infinity of lines extending ladder-like toward the potential of immortality. Each line, as the ladder mounted, was spaced a little wider than the last in a geometric progression. Okay. The thrust of survival is away from death and toward immortality. Okay, let's look at this graph. You know what? I should have made picture of this and put it up on my community tab. So there's that. Okay, so you have potential, zone 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm assuming this is going to become the tone scale, unless this is just something completely different. I'm only guessing. And then you have these lines here. Individual survival is the solid line. So it's going from here, here. And then you have his children in the dotted line. And then you have their children up to zone 3. I don't know what these mean. He kind of explains it. It doesn't make any sense. Survival suppressor. He talks about that later. Survival dynamic. He talks about that. And I guess you have to be between here. And that's optimum zone. Potential immortality dash ultimate pleasure. Descriptive graph of survival. So, I mean, why do we need a graph for survival? To explain survival. We know we don't want death. He really has to have a whole chapter on this? I'm in my own zone. Right. I think we all want to stay away from death and do our best to survive. And that's kind of what he says. Alright, so, hold on. For the individual, the length of the arrow could be considered to be at a high potential within the 4th zone. I don't see anybody down here in the 4th zone. Here, the survival potential would be excellent and the individual would enjoy existence. Okay. I see that. From left to right could be graphed the years. I didn't read into that part. So, okay, I didn't see that. This arrow is time. So as time goes on, this person dies right here. Same. Or, so. I didn't, okay, so. The urge toward pleasure is dynamic. Pleasure is the reward and the seeking of the reward, survival goals. Pain is provided to repel the individual from death. Pleasure is provided to call him toward optimum life. And then he goes into so many definitions of what happens if your goal is pleasure, or we don't need all that. Now, it would be well to define what is meant by pleasure, aside from its connection with immortality. The dictionary states that pleasure is gratification, agreeable emotions, mental or physical, transient enjoyment opposed to pain. Seems pretty black and white there. I think we already know this. Now there is more in this graph than has been remarked as yet. The physical and mental state of the individual varies from hour to hour, day to day, year to year. Therefore, the level of survival would form either a daily curve or the curve of life on a measure of hourly. Okay, I'm not going to finish that. It's just how to, more of that. The day to day and the changing of the graph. The zones then can apply to two things, the physical being and the mental being. Therefore, these 4 zones can be called zones of the states of being. Okay, does anybody know? I mean, I've watched a lot, and I've never heard anybody talk about zones. All I've ever heard is the tone scale. So, that's why I'm assuming this goes into the tone scale later, that he expands it a little bit more in detail like he likes to do. Okay. So, if a person is happy mentally, the survival level can be placed in zone 4. And if you're physically ill, zone 1, close to death. Obvious. I'm not either. But I hear ex-Scientologists saying, oh, you're tone 40. If you're low on the tone scale, you're a suppressive person. Or if you're high on the tone scale. So I've only heard them say it like that. I don't know exactly how it works. They kind of say it to the security guards and Scientologists sometimes. Um, so, I don't know the exact... Maybe I'll look it up. Maybe. Could be. I'll look it up next time. I'll have it. I'll have... If it's a thing, I'll figure it out. What the tone scale is. And, I'll bring it up next time. Now, this goes into a lot of the weird zone numbers and stuff, so I'm just going to touch on it quickly. So, like, very imprecise, but nevertheless descriptive, names have been assigned to those zones. Oh, no, I have to read these. Zone 3 is one of general happiness and well-being. Zone 2 is a level of bearable existence. Zone 1 is one of anger. Zone 0 is the zone of apathy. These zones can be used as a tone scale by which a state of mind can be graded. Okay, I'm not going to go into all these numbers again. In the course of a single day, an aberree may run from a 0.5 to a 3.5 up and down as a mental being. As an accident or illness could cause a similar fluctuation in the day. Okay. In Dianetics, we do not much employ the physical tone scale. The mental tone scale, however, is of vast and vital importance. And we know that. We know they don't care about your physical well-being. Even though it can bring you down to zone 0, they don't care. Did anybody watch Aaron's about this William, the security guard? I guess he fell down and hurt his knee. And since that's considered your fault, he's been punished for it because he was David Miscavige's security and he did it in front of him. So he's been severely punished because of it. So far as to move his wife across country, give him a crappy job, all that. Okay. So, physical. So they're going to deal with just the mental part in the book. The further away from death the top point of survival dynamic arrow is, the better chance the individual has of survival. Duh. The organism is surviving through time from left to right. Survival optimum immortality lies in terms of time to the right. Potential only is measured vertically. Now I see why they had to have classes on this book. Because nobody's going to be able to read this book and understand what the heck he's talking about. Within itself, the organism possesses a repulsive form... Wait. Nope, I didn't. There was something else. The survival dynamic actually resides within the organism as inherited from the species. And he talks about what we already know, how species evolve through their environment to survive. He talks about this a lot. It's a lot. That's the stuff I left out. Like, he talked about organism, he talked about bacteria, he talked about ducks and dinosaurs. I think I'm going to read some of that. Within itself, the organism possesses a repulsive force toward pain source. So, pain is bad. Can you imagine protecting the cult leader, then reduced to regular security? I know, and that's not the only thing they did. So they took his wife away, moved her across country, which meant he couldn't have his own room anymore, put him in a crappy dorm. That's probably why he's always in a bad mood. Well, they're all always in a bad mood. Who's happy in Scientology? That's the sad part, and I think Nora said it, I can't remember, and I heard somebody else say it. They said there's not one redeeming quality of Scientology. There's not one thing that you can say, well, because of this, there's some good in it. Because they're not helping people. All they're doing is bringing them in, brainwashing them, getting them under mind control, and putting them on slave labor or taking their money. And that's what's sad about all this. That's what I'm trying to find out in this, is why. Why did this touch so many people that they wanted to be in Scientology and stay? Sorry about that. It should not be read here that survival is always a matter of keeping an eye on the future. Contemplation of pleasure, pure enjoyment, contemplation of past pleasures, all combined into harmonies which, while they operate automatically as a rise toward the survival potential by their action within the organism physically, do not demand the future as an active portion of the mental computation in such contemplation. I might have to read that again. I didn't understand that. Goodness. I had some I gotta get my biotin out. That stuff works great on dry mouth. Okay. Equation of immoral pleasures and any action which has brought about survival suppression or which can bring it about when pursued as a pleasure has been denounced at some time or another in man's history. Immortality is originally hung as a label upon some act or class of actions because they depress the level of the survival dynamic. Class of actions that depress. Okay, I get that. Alright. Okay, I put interesting by this paragraph. I can't remember everything I read, I just have the general idea. Okay. Oh, I decided to go ahead and read all this because it was interesting. When the Christian overthrew the pagan state, the ancient order of Rome was in a villain's role. Anything, therefore, which was Roman was villainous. This went to such remarkable lengths that the Roman love of bathing made bathing so immoral that Europe went unwashed for some 1,500 years. I never heard that, and I watch and listen to a lot of history, and I've never heard that the reason they stopped bathing was because it was made immoral. Maybe it was, and it was left out of documentaries. Interesting. Because we never can believe this guy. He makes stuff up. He doesn't expect anybody reading this to go, there was no internet back then, or go to the library and check it out. So, I don't, I can't never trust anything he says. The Roman had become a pain source so general that everything Roman was evil. Oh, that's why I went ahead and read this. I'll tell you why in a second. Immorality in such a fashion tends to become an involved subject. In this case, it became so involved that pleasure itself was stigmatized. This part about the Roman had become a pain source so general that everything Roman was evil, and it stayed evil long after Roman paganism perished. What I saw there was how they make everyone outside the church evil. So if he's teaching them this, that it's against survival, then there's probably some teachings that, that he worked into the mind control, telling them that, well, everyone outside the church is evil because of something like this. So I can see where the mind control is coming in with these examples. Although, if you had thought about it deeply at all, you would see that it was ridiculous that they made Romans immoral just because. So, it would make me, if I was in Scientology and said all those people out there are evil like these Romans, I'd be like, but they really weren't evil. See, you can't think about it too deeply, like Aaron says. When half the survival potential is struck from the list of lawful things, there is a considerable reduction in survival, indeed. Consider this graph on a racial scale. And I wanted to see if what he was saying under here, because they said they had to change his writings because he was so racial about things. Or racist, I mean. Considering this graph on a racial scale, The reduction of survival potential by 1/2 would forecast that direful things lay in wait for the race. Actually, because man is, after all, man, no set of laws, however enforced, can completely wipe away the attraction of pleasure. But in this case, enough was removed and banned to occasion precisely what happened: the Dark Ages and the recession of society. Okay, so he's saying because bathing was made immoral and Romans were considered evil, the Dark Ages and the recession of society happened. So he's actually saying that we shouldn't make something evil and bad just because, or it can cause the Dark Ages. But isn't that exactly what Scientology does? Oh, that is a correct statement. Remember, everyone, we have a free mind. We would quit his cult in a second, but Jason Jarrett is under a spell. Yes, he's brainwashed. Probably from a young age. I think that's why, if you notice, I've noticed that most of the people that are in uniform are either young or very, very old. I don't really see middle-aged people in the uniforms, like Sea Org or staff. So they're either so old they came in the 60s and 70s under Dianetics, when it wasn't even Scientology at first. It was called Dianetics, and they had Dianetics centers, which if he'd have been smart, he would have just left it that. But no, he had to have a religion and he had to be tax exempt so he could buy property and have a lot of money. So, but like I said, if you thought about this deeply enough, he's saying that making something evil just for the sake of making it evil, then it's going to bring on the Dark Ages and a recession of society. Society brightened only in those periods, such as the Renaissance, in which pleasure became less unlawful. So, if we were to follow his book, then why does he punish anything pleasurable that you would do in Scientology? You're not allowed to do anything outside what you're doing in Scientology. I mean, I've never even heard if they're allowed to watch regular TV. I don't think they are. If they're not a pub. I'm talking about Sea Org staff. Okay. When a race or an individual drops into the second zone, as marked on the chart, and the general tone ranges from the first zone barely into the third, a condition of insanity ensues. Insanity is irrationality. Now, I underlined that because insanity is irrationality. Isn't a lot of what Scientology does and teaches irrational? It doesn't make sense in the real world. So he knows that that's a bad thing. That it would be a survival suppression. That's why the Church of Scientology isn't surviving. They're suppressing their own people with their rules and their teachings, and that's why they're not growing. Like I said, if they had anything pleasurable or fun or worth something in Scientology, then they would grow. They could if they would get rid of the abuse and the slave labor, they'd be okay for the most part. I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the abuse and the brainwashing. If they just let people be Scientologists and not be so controlling and abusive, they'd probably have more members. You hear that, Osa? Let Davey know. If he'd stop beating on people and putting people in horrible living conditions, you probably wouldn't have people blowing and leaving. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but I can't remember who said it. If I think it was Aaron or Nora. I can't remember. Somebody asked, "Are they getting calls from the for the SBTV Foundation?" And they said since the protesting started, they have gotten numerous calls. It's working. So I just wanted to put that in there. All right. So now we're going to go into survival suppressor. I didn't go into all the details on that one. Now, I have confused by this paragraph because it didn't make any sense. The balance and nature of things do not permit the infinity. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't turn on my do not disturb. It's probably loud. Sorry. I'm afraid to go in and do it now. It might kick me off. The balance and nature of things do not permit the infinity of the goal of immortality to be reached. I'm gonna do it anyway. Hold on. I think I can do not disturb without kicking you off. Did it kick me off? It looked like it did. Are you guys still there? Please be there. Last time it lied to me and said I was live and I wasn't. What the X did I just say? I may have missed it because I think it kicked me off for a second. So, let me start that over. The balance and nature of things do not permit the infinity of the goal of immortality to be reached. In fluctuating balance and in almost unlimited complexity, life and energies ebb and flow out of the nebulous into forms and through decay into the nebulous once more. Many equations could be drawn concerning this, but it is outside the sphere of our present interest. I've read a lot of dry textbooks in my day, but it wasn't this confusing. Now, again, if you think too deeply, he's saying, no, that's not, I got that wrong. Alright. But every life form has its own technology formed to resolve the problems of food, protection, and procreation. The degree of workability of the technology any life form develops, armor or brains, fleetness of foot or deceptive form, is a direct index of the survival potential, the relative immortality of that form. You know, I get it. I get what he's trying to say, but if he would have just stuck with people talking about us, that would have been enough. I think we would have got it. But he has, I mean, there's whole pages here that's just going into examples of organisms, survival instincts. A great climate change, such as the one which packed so many mammoths in Siberian ice, may overload the suppressor on a life form. A long drought in the American Southwest is not too ancient times, wiped out the better part of an Indian civilization. I don't think they've proved that yet, but that could be true. And then he just goes into more examples like that. And a life form can even overload the suppressor on itself. A dinosaur destroys all his food and so destroys the dinosaur. So that kind of makes sense. I have a question mark on this whole page. It talks about redwood trees, the attitude of trees, keeping oxygen in balance. So it literally goes into a whole page of how trees survive. I think we know how they work. Necessity has been declared to be a very wonderful thing. Opportunism seems to have been read largely into necessity. That's a definite human thing. Opportunism. Recalling the dramatic and overlooking the important, man has conceived himself from time to time to be an object of chase by necessity and pain. These were two anthropomorphic, man-like in parentheses. He couldn't have said something. He had to say, didn't he say he wasn't going to use big words in this book? I think I underlined that spot. Because then he says, let me find it again, sorry. Anthropomorphic and then man-like in parentheses. And I'm like, why didn't you just say something about man? Man-like things, which in full costume stuck spears at him. It can be said to be a wrong concept merely because it does not work to produce more answers. I don't know why I'm still getting that noise, and I know it's loud. I'm sorry. It can be said to be a wrong concept merely because it does not work to produce more answers. And I wrote confusing. I didn't get it. I didn't understand exactly what he was trying to say there. Whatever there is of necessity is within him. Nothing is driving him except his original impetus to survive. It chances to be a scientific fact that man is a self-determined organism to be the outermost limit that any form of life can be. Okay. He went into self-determinism a lot. The more sentient, the more rational an organism, the more that organism is self-determined. Self-determinism, like all things, is relative. Compared to a rat, however, man is very self-determined indeed. This is only a scientific fact because it can easily be proven. I don't know. Rats are pretty self-determined to survive. They go through a lot. Just saying. Alright. He operates in a high zone level of survival potential. But here he is, self-determined, rational, his primary weapon, his mind, in excellent working order. What are his necessity instincts? We're still talking about necessity. Whoops. Hold on. That was my sage. And it might still be on fire. Whoops. Where'd it go? Oh. Ooh. Oh, thank God, not on fire. Yes, I'm wearing jamming pants. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I didn't want my house to burn down. I hit it with my water bottle. Okay. I always wear jamming pants at home. I don't put jeans on unless I'm going somewhere. Okay, where were we? What are his necessity instincts? And he goes into a paragraph I didn't understand at all. It didn't make sense. Then I'm going to say, the compulsion mentioned can be reevaluated in terms of the survival dynamic. That is interior in the organism and the race and what is necessary to survival. We have seen and can prove clinically that there are two factors at work. The necessity of avoiding pain is a factor because degree by degree, little things, not much in themselves, can amount to large pains. And this made no sense. Which, compounded in the rapid geometric progression, bring on death. The heck? Couldn't he just said that brings on death? Pain is the sadness of being... Oh, I underlined this on purpose. Think about this and being in Sea Org. Pain is the sadness of being bawled out for poor work, because that may lead to being fired, which may lead to starvation, which may lead to death. Run any equation into which pain has entered, and it can be seen that it reduces down to possible non-survival. Scientology inner workings are exactly the opposite of that. So how do they expect their people to want to survive if they're doing this? Hey, Anna. I know. What the heck? I have some thoughts. Go ahead, I'm almost done. It's almost the last page. What are your thoughts? Eventually, I'm going to have this on my computer, and we're going to have call-ins. So if people want to talk about it, we can. I'll go ahead and go on, but we're at the end, so if you have thoughts, give them here. Okay. There is, therefore, a necessity for pleasure, for working, as happiness can be defined toward known goals, over not unknowable obstacles. And the necessity for pleasure is such that a great deal of pain can be borne to attain it. That's kind of what he says in Scientology. You have to put up with this crap to get to a certain level. It just goes into examples like, it is hearing the kid first say daddy, and kissing a pretty girl. But you're not allowed to do that in Scientology. You're not allowed to be happy in Scientology. AARON was a crazy loon. You cannot be normal and believe this stuff. I think it's not about being... I don't want to go hard on ex-Scientologies like that, because we've seen that so many of them are normal. But they didn't go into it like my age and go into Scientology. You know, they were put in as kids for the most part, or teenagers, or their parents were Scientologists. There are those few. That's what this is about, because it had to be, it was newer. There weren't parents. So 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, mostly 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know when the Dianetics centers went out. You know, he had to get them in. He had to give them something. And so he's saying he understands you should be happy to survive. But eventually, and maybe public Scientologists get that to a degree. They get the happiness part to a degree, because they're not in Sea Org. They're not slave labor. They're not being accosted and abused and not let to have a life and living in disgusting conditions wall to wall, or I should say shoulder to shoulder. So you have, it's like a two-caste system. We know in Scientology. You have the public and you have Sea Org and staff. Sea Org and staff. You can't see my hand down here, but you know what I mean. So this is why I think under AARON, I mean, he was only there till 83, I think. And most of the people that were in those years didn't go through things as badly as they did under David Miscavige. So I will say I can understand how another way that those people came in, they probably weren't quite as bad. I never watched the older people that were like in the mesh, that knew L. Ron Hubbard. I need to watch. There's so much to watch that I never did. I've seen them have interviews with Aaron and Nora and stuff like that, but it's hard. I don't have the time to go watch everything. Maybe I should go or read a book. I should probably get Janice's book, where she talks about the way she talks about it. She talks about it like it was okay, and then they left during David Miscavige. Okay, Donna. I only got one more thing that I have to read. Let me read it real quick. Man will endure a lot of pain to obtain a little pleasure. Out in the laboratory of the world, it takes very little time to confirm that. And how does necessity fit this picture? There is a necessity for pleasure. The pain drive theory does not work. If some of these basics of Dianetics were only poetry about the idyllic state of man, They might be justified in that. But it happens that out in the laboratory of the world, they work. Man in affinity with man survives, and that survival is pleasure. The pain drive theory does not work. I don't think David Miscavige has read this book. That's the end of it. If he read this book at all, I mean, he had to, because he changed it. Unless he had other publishers. I know other people worked on it. Maybe because I think it was Aaron was, to say he didn't have anything to say about the publishing. Continue auditing and brainwashing and punishments will cause anyone to believe this crap. Yeah. I mean, they get to a place where they get them. I mean, I really do think, I'm not going to say the word because I know I might get dinged, but you know who was in charge of Germany in World War II. He got a whole country to go along. Not all of them believed it. He got them all to go along with what he was doing. And so many people, were gung-ho about it. And he took a religion of people, right? I don't know how to describe it. And he made a whole, I won't say it, I'll say half the country. Half the country hate them. For no other reason than he said they were evil, just like the Christians did the Romans. And one man controlled all of those people, even when he wasn't around, because they snitched on each other. If you talk bad about the leader, oh no, you were told on. I think L. Ron Hubbard served in World War II, and he studied that guy. He studied that guy. He studied his charisma. He studied how he brainwashed them. And I really do think that's where he got a lot of this, the propaganda, and how he puts out, I just saw last night, this video, put out, that's what Adolf did. He put out posters, he put out flyers, he put out propaganda, he did radio shows. Did he do TV? More radio, I think. Speeches. He covered the place with his propaganda and his presence. I mean, and get this. He got them to believe in the Aryan race. Blonde hair, blue eyes. What did he look like? But nobody saw the conundrum in that. There's a better word for it. I just can't think of it. But he did it. He just blanketed them with propaganda. So that's what he's doing now. He's got all this propaganda, all these teachings, and against anyone outside the church is evil. And anything not to have with Scientology is evil. You have to stay in the bubble. And if you don't, you get snitched on by the SS. OSA, SS. If you know anything about World War II, if you don't, most of you are probably old enough to have at least got it in your history books. But I can see, again, now this one was kind of hard to understand. But again, they had Dianetics centers and classes to help you understand it. So pretty much he spent 15 pages. Yeah, 15 pages just telling you how survival of man is important and that we should have survival instincts. But the fact that he talks about pain doesn't work, only pleasure does, where did that concept go with the Sea Org and the RPF and beating on executives? Of course, that's all David Miscavige. I don't know. I need to learn more about L. Ron Hubbard because I don't know how it really was for him. Most of the people I watch never knew him. They aren't old enough. So, I'm done with that. The next, this might get interesting because we've heard about the dynamics. So the next chapter is the 4 dynamics. So that might be fun. So I will see you guys hopefully soon in Austin if these storms go away. I think they're supposed to this week. It's gotten out of hand. Go look at my community post. We almost drove into hurricane winds on Thursday because we didn't check the dang weather. Because driving north of here, I'm driving into Tornado Alley. So, y'all have a good Sunday, and I'll see you next time. Bye.